Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the public information meeting for Project 94-235, which involves the rehabilitation of bridge number 3819, also known as the Gold Star Memorial Bridge northbound structure. Thank you for your patience as we work through making sure that we're recording this online as well for people at home. Next slide, please. All right. Well, my name is Tracy Bray, and I am the project manager for the Gold Star project. I work for the Connecticut Department of Transportation in the Major Structures Unit. So before we jump into the details of the proposed project, I'm just going to cover some of the housekeeping items. I'm sorry for the people that are here in person. This isn't relevant to you, but for everybody that's joining us virtually, through Zoom, there is closed captioning and non-English translation options available. To change the settings, you can click on the Show Captions CC icon at the bottom of the Zoom window. Click the speaking language, and then select the language you would like from the list shown. All right, so these are a little different. So there are 3 ways that people online will be able to reach out to us and provide comments and questions during the meeting tonight. One of those is by email at dot.goldstarbridgeprojects@ct.gov. The other option is to call us by phone at 860-594-2020 and leave a voicemail. When you leave a voicemail, please refer to Project 94-235. The third option for those that are joining via Zoom is to use the Zoom Q&A function. I will go through the instructions on how to use that in a subsequent slide. Could we go back, please, to the last one? Thank you. I have a little bit more. So after tonight's meeting, the Zoom Q&A function will only be available during the meeting tonight. But after tonight's meeting, you'll be able to still send us emails via the project email address or call us at the phone number on the screen right now. We'll have a comment period open for another 2 weeks, ending on May 14th. After this meeting, we're also going to prepare meeting minutes and post those, as well as a link to the recording of this meeting, to our project website. So the URL for the project website is up there. I'll read it off for anybody listening. It's https://portal.ct.gov/project-pages/gold-star-memorial-bridge. And also on this website, you'll be able to find a copy of this presentation, as well as other documents as the design progresses. Next slide, please. So again, for those joining via Zoom, you can type in your comments and questions through the Q&A tool in Zoom. So there's a little icon with 2 word clouds. This is Q&A. If you click on that, the window will open up, and you can type in your comment or question at the bottom and hit enter. And then you can enter these comments or questions at any point during this meeting. At the end of the presentation, we will read off your questions and provide responses, though. And then if you are an audio-only participant, dial *9 to raise and lower your hand. Another item, we'd like to remind you all of your civil rights. Under Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, no person shall, on the basis of race, color, or national origin, be excluded from participation or subject to discrimination in the development of this project. We also have on this slide a link to the Office of Equity's webpage, which has more information about Title VI, your rights, and also information on who to contact if you have a complaint or questions. We also have a QR code here on this slide that you can take a photo of with your smartphone, and it'll take you to a voluntary post-meeting survey where you can provide feedback on the timing of this meeting, the information provided, as well as accessibility. We appreciate any feedback that you provide because that will help us improve our meeting process in the future. And again, as I mentioned previously, a recording of this presentation will be posted to YouTube as well as the project website after this event, so you can review it later. Next slide, please. And this is another slide just describing a little bit further that the Connecticut Department of Transportation operates its programs and services to adhere to the Title VI requirements. And it has more information on how to file a complaint with FHWA and CONDOT. This is the same information, but provided in Spanish. I'll pause for a moment so that folks in the audience here and those online can read through. Okay. So the agenda for tonight's meeting, we'll introduce the project team, and then we'll head into the technical portion of the presentation, where we will describe the existing conditions, the purpose and need of the project, the rehabilitation work that's proposed under this project, as well as the benefits and impacts associated with the project. And at the end of that presentation, we'll open it up to the question and answer period, where people in the audience here can ask questions and people online can ask questions and post comments. So from the project team, we have folks from Connecticut DOT and the consulting engineering firm H&TB, who is the designer of record on this project. From the Connecticut DOT, we have Bart Sweeney, who's here tonight, the division chief of bridges. We also have Bao Chung, the principal engineer from the major bridge unit. He is online joining us from Zoom. Again, I'm Tracy Bray, the project manager. We also have Louis Alfonso from the major structures unit. He is the project engineer. And we have Matt Giannakopoulos, who is our right-of-way property agent, here with us. And we also have folks from our District 2 construction office. So we have Eileen Ego, the district engineer, here tonight in person. John Deliberto, the assistant district engineer, Jason Burgess, the supervising engineer, and Keith Shoppy, the project engineer. They're helping with the phase 1 rehab project that's currently in construction on the Northbound bridge. Oops. Back one slide, please. Okay. And then from H&TB, we have Jake Argiro, the principal in charge, here tonight. Emma Covington-Hilbrun, the project manager. Nick Wild, the deputy project manager. David Schweitzer, the highway civil lead. David Giel, the traffic lead. And Naomi Hodges, the environmental lead. So at this point, I will turn it over to Emma to go through the technical portion of the presentation.
Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. Good evening. My name is Emma Covington-Harbron, and I am the project manager from HNCB for the Northbound Gold Star Rehabilitation Project. As many of you, I'm sure, are very aware, the Northbound Gold Star Bridge carries I-95 northbound traffic between New London and Groton. Along with the southbound bridge, the Gold Star bridges are the only bridges in this area and are a vital link in this northeast corridor, connecting not only interstate traffic, but also regional traffic within Connecticut and between the two local towns. On the northbound bridge, exit 85 provides access to the town of Groton and points south towards Pfizer, Electric Boat, the University of Connecticut at Avery Point, and the Groton New London Airport. US Route 1 combines with I-95 northbound over the bridge, and that also diverges at this exit. Just past the bridge, exit 86 connects to Route 184 and Route 12 and provides access to the US Naval Base. And then from the southbound bridge, exit 84 provides access to Route 32 and the city of New London, and to the north provides access to the US Coast Guard Academy and Connecticut College, and then to the south, LMN Hospital and State Pier. The northbound Gold Star Bridge was originally constructed in 1943 to carry 2 lanes of traffic in both directions, in both the northbound and southbound directions. With the construction of the dedicated southbound bridge in the late 1960s, the northbound bridge was partially reconstructed in 1975 to widen the existing structure and increase traffic capacity. Now, 50 years on, the northbound bridge is in need of rehabilitation again. The main goal of this rehabilitation project is to strengthen the existing superstructure and to increase the structural capacity of the bridge to allow permit vehicles to traverse the bridge. Currently, heavy permit vehicles are not allowed to use the bridge, and they have to find an alternate route to travel through this northeast corridor. The second goal of this project is to perform a full deck replacement, steel strengthening repairs and concrete substructure repairs to restore the bridge to a satisfactory condition rating. This will not only extend the service life of the bridge, but it will also ensure long-term performance as well as improve safety on the bridge. So I'm going to be using quite a few terms here, and I'd like to provide some very high-level definitions of what those are. So this image that you see right now is a schematic of the elements of a bridge. The top of the bridge, we have our deck system, or the deck, and this is essentially the surface that you drive on every day, and is probably the element that also gets the most wear and tear. On the edges of the bridge is the parapet, or we'll have a bridge railing, and this is basically what keeps you on the bridge in the event of an accident. It helps keep you safe. It helps you prevent driving off the bridge, and then in the event of an accident, it also keeps you on the bridge. Supporting the deck are the superstructure elements. This is composed of beams, and they can go either in the longitudinal or transverse direction. In the case of the northbound Gold Star Bridge, we have girder elements and beam elements, and those are steel elements. Supporting the superstructure, we have our substructure elements, and those mainly consist of abutments and concrete piers. The abutments are what support the bridge at its beginning and its end, and then the pier units are what support the bridge in between the abutments. The substructure units are also what connect the superstructure to the ground. The Gold Star Bridge is currently expected on a biannual basis. A condition rating is performed for various bridge components, such as the ones I've just briefly gone over, and provide an overall characterization of the general condition of the bridge. Condition ratings are determined by comparing the current condition of the bridge compared to its as-built condition or its previously rehabilitated condition. So to give you just an example, a condition rating of 4 is considered poor, and that would, in terms of, say, superstructure elements such as your beams, that would include significant deterioration or section loss to those elements, whereas a condition rating of 9 is excellent, and that's pretty much almost near perfect condition. Based on the most recent inspection report for the Northbound Bridge, the existing deck has a condition rating of 4 or poor. This deck was reconstructed in 1975, but given its current condition, it's definitely reached the end of its current service life. In addition, the existing parapet on the bridge, so those elements that keep us on the bridge, is a 32-inch reinforced concrete parapet, and it has an aluminum fence. This existing parapet is not currently crash tested, and the aluminum fence that is connected to the parapet is often damaged and is quite difficult to repair. So the parapet and the existing fence will also be replaced. The existing superstructure also has a condition rating of 4 or poor. The superstructure elements that currently support the deck were replaced with the deck in 1975. However, the elements supporting the deck system, so those beam elements and the deck, are original to the 1940s construction. There is significant deterioration and section loss in some of these steel elements, so they need to be repaired, and any pack rust also be removed. The structure will also be repainted as well. That's a big one. The existing substructure units are original to the bridge construction, so those are also 1940s construction, and they're mainly comprised of two reinforced concrete columns with a cap connecting the tops. They have a condition rating of fair or 5, and they are subject to minor repairs such as patching. The existing substructures are also considered in good enough condition to support or to accommodate any steel strengthening and the deck replacement work that we'll be doing to extend the life of the bridge, provided that it receives consistent maintenance and through the next years of this bridge's life. So just to quickly summarize the rehabilitation work that we'll be performing on this bridge, we'll be strengthening and repairing the structural steel elements in the girder spans of this long structure. We'll be replacing all the bearings in the girder spans and select bearings in the truss spans of the bridge. We will be doing a full deck replacement, so from abutment to abutment, the full length of the bridge. We'll be replacing the deck and all the deck joints. We will be replacing the existing parapet and aluminum fence with a MASH-compliant 3-rail steel barrier and a stainless steel mesh fence. And I just want to clarify, a MASH-compliant barrier is one that has been rigorously tested to FHWA standards, and it provides superior safety to the bridge. We will also be doing a full superstructure painting on the bridge. We'll be replacing all the concrete approach slabs, so those are the areas before you get on the bridge. We'll be repairing the concrete substructures, so doing that patching work that we were talking about, and we'll be installing new light standards and support framing for those, and new overhead sign structures for traffic. I'll now walk you through our proposed construction staging for the rehabilitation work. The construction staging is mainly divided into 2 main stages. The first construction stage will divert two lanes of I-95 northbound traffic to the southbound bridge, which my colleague Mr. Schweitzer will go into more detail in a few moments. And then 2 lanes of traffic will be diverted to the center of the existing northbound bridge. By diverting those 2 lanes of traffic to the center, it will allow us to start our deck demolition work. So we'll remove the deck on the north side and the south side of the bridges. Before doing any deck demolition work, we'll make sure that debris shielding is installed to safeguard any structures or any roads that are beneath the structure. Once the existing deck on the north and south side is removed, we'll then install all our steel strengthening measures to increase the structural capacity of the bridge. Once the steel strengthening has been installed or the repairs have been installed, we'll then install our new deck through the length of on the north and south sides of the bridge, and that will complete our stage 1 work. When we then go to construction stage 2, we will shift those 2 lanes of traffic from the center of the bridge to the south side of the bridge on our newly reconstructed deck, and we will then demolish the existing deck along the center of the bridge and replace with our new bridge deck. And again, debris shielding will be installed throughout the full length of the bridge to safeguard any roads and structures beneath the northbound bridge. So the next few slides will illustrate how the construction work can be staged to provide the most efficient schedule. So we'll start the stage 1 deck demolition on the west approach girder spans and the east approach trusses and the east approach girder spans. So those are the areas highlighted in light green and in light blue. We will do our deck demolition there, like I said before, on the north and south sides of the bridge, and we'll perform our strengthening measures in those spans first. These spans are primarily the land-based spans, and it's also where most of the structural strengthening work will be happening. So we want to make sure that we get that work taken care of first. After the deck demo, to complete this work efficiently, we're looking at 4 crews working simultaneously. So if you think about how we divide this work, it's the north and south side of the bridges on the west, and then the north and south sides of the bridges on the east. It's having 4 crews in each of those areas. So divide into 4 sections. After the stage 1 deck demolition and steel strengthening is performed, we'll then install the new deck along these same spans. We also anticipate 4 crews working simultaneously there so that we complete this work in the most efficient manner. Once the deck has been installed on the west approach girder spans and the east approach girder truss spans and girder spans on the north and south side, we'll then move to the west approach truss span and the main truss span. These are mainly the spans that are over the river. So currently we are not anticipating much structural steel work there, so this is a deck removal only in these spans. And as with the previous spans that we already looked at, we're looking at 4 crews working simultaneously to complete this work. Oh, is this the same slide? Is this a different? No. Oh, sorry. So after we've demoed the deck, we'll then install the new deck. My apologies. This is a similar slide using 4 crews. So that will conclude the stage 1 construction. We'll then move into construction stage 2. This is where we'll then shift the traffic from the center of the bridge to the south side of the bridge, and then we'll work on doing the deck demolition along the full length of the bridge. We'll have the north side of the bridge, which also has that newly constructed deck that we did in stage 1 to provide construction access. So we hope that the deck demolition and deck replacement along the center of the bridge will go quicker. We think either 2 or 4 crews could be used to do this work. Either 1 crew working from each end of the bridge and then working towards the middle, or having 4 crews, 1 at each end and then 2 starting the middle and then working towards each other, so that we can complete this deck demolition and deck replacement in a timely manner. And with that, I will turn it over to my colleague, Mr. Schweitzer.
To the screen and point as I'm explaining, because there's a lot going on here. As Ms. Heilbronn was explaining, there's a very vital link, both locally, statewide, and regional. So it's important to understand some of the existing conditions out there that help lead us to how we determine the best and most efficient way to build this bridge and maintain traffic. Now, I-95 is highlighted by the 2 blue lines here. This green dashed line in the center is representing the crossover that we are proposing, that 2-lane northbound crossover. So if you look here at the northbound direction, I-95 northbound is to 3 lanes as it approaches the bridge. traffic from 32 southbound, which also carries US 1, plus local traffic from New London, forms a lane add onto the bridge. So that forms the fourth lane, while the Route 32 northbound traffic, along with Huntington Street, forms the fifth lane. So we have 5 lanes going across the northbound bridge. On the departure side, exit 85 is a right-hand lane drop that is on the structure. And then about 1,500 feet off of this is exit 86 to Route 184, Route 12, and points north, which is a left-hand lane drop. Now, what's important to note about these is that these two lane adds add about 40% of the traffic that is on the existing northbound bridge. And also, the exit 85 and exit 86 take about 40% of that traffic that was on the bridge. So this really is a local connector to get from New London to Groton. On the southbound side, exit 86, I-95 southbound approaches the Gold Star Bridge with 3 lanes approaching. Exit 86 is a left-hand lane add. Okay, so that will give us the 4 lanes, while exit 85, the ramp from Bridge Street and from downtown Groton, comes on as 2 lanes, but quickly merges to 1 lane. So again, we have 5 lanes for a good majority of the southbound bridge, where exit 84 becomes a right-hand lane drop, and which goes to Route 32, and where exit 83, which is to the frontage roads in US 1, is also a right-hand lane drop. These 2 exits on this side add just a little bit less than 40% of the traffic that is on the bridge, while these 2 exits on the departure side take a little bit greater than 40% of the traffic off of the bridge. Can we go to the next slide, please? So if you look at what we have, this at the top are existing conditions with southbound on the left side and northbound on the right. We're showing something fairly similar where we have 10-foot left and right shoulders with 5 12-foot travel lanes. What we're looking to do, as Emma was explaining, we're looking to take 2 lanes of that I-95 northbound traffic and put it onto the southbound bridge. Southbound traffic will be reduced to 3 through lanes. In stage 1, we'll be carrying the traffic in the center of the bridge while we work on both of the outsides. And then in stage 2, stage 1 and stage 2 are consistent. We won't be changing any traffic on the southbound bridge. On the northbound bridge, we'll be moving those 2 lanes to the southbound side while the center portion of the bridge is reconstructed. So if we're going to look at this so we can get a blow-up of both the approach and then the departure side, we'll look at the New London side first. Next, thank you. So what we have here is this here showing Route 32 running diagonal on the left side, 95 southbound to the top, 95 northbound to the bottom of this screen. So these 2 lanes are represented by the green, will be the northbound lanes that will cross over. Half mile to the west, I-95 northbound is only 2 lanes. It widens out to 3. We will not allow that 3rd lane to develop. So we'll take those 2 lanes of the 95 northbound traffic and put them onto the southbound bridge. We'll provide a slip ramp here for 95 northbound traffic that wants to access Bridge Street or US 1, so it basically wants to get to exit 85. The traffic that comes from Route 32 southbound, plus the Bridge Street on-ramp, plus US 1, will come on and will be that will merge with this slip ramp traffic and form one of the lanes on the existing northbound bridge. The 2nd lane that will be on the bridge will be formed from Route 32 northbound plus Huntington Street will form that 2nd lane. So as we look at stage 2, you can see we still have those 2 lanes crossing over to northbound while we have that 1 slip ramp coming on to get to exit 85. Our access from Route 32, both southbound and northbound, remains the same, but our traffic has now shifted to the south side of the bridge, while everything remains the same on the southbound bridge. So then if we go back, look at our cross sections again. No, I'm sorry. You can go back, go ahead a slide, please, Shannon. So just going back to the typical sections real quick, just to show you. So this is stage 1. We're working on both sides, driving in the center. Stage 2, we're working in the center, contractor access to the north side, 2 lanes on the south side. Crossover, 2 lanes northbound with the 3 southbound, and we remain consistent between stage 1 and stage 2. Now we'll look at the departure side, or the Groton side, and the blow up of this is showing us, again, this green line showing the 2 lanes of the northbound crossover coming back onto the northbound, forming the left and center lanes on existing I-95. Off of this crossover will be the access to exit 86, that left-hand lane drop that goes up to Route 184 and Route 12. That will come off of the crossover. On the existing bridge, we have the 2 lanes that will split. One will carry through, so the traffic from Route 32 or from downtown New London will have access to I-95 northbound, while the second lane that was on the existing northbound bridge will provide access to exit 85 to both Bridge Street and to US 1. Can you go to the next slide? An important point about this and this access to exit 85 is because it departs on the bridge, and this here is the end of our bridge. So in stage 1, we're showing it carrying out before we split. Now, and we'll build a temporary off-ramp in here so we can still access US 1 and Bridge Street with the continuing access to I-95 northbound. But then we want to substage this. So when we're in this stage, we can build this portion of this bridge down in here, as Ms. Heilbronn was explaining. So then we can substage this, so then we can exit that traffic off here. We'll move it back. Here's the end of our bridge, so we're pushing that diverge point back. We'll still have access to 95 northbound, and then we'll be able to diverge off to exit 85. What this allows us to do is it really limits the amount of closures we need to have to get to Bridge Street. Because if we were to put in a temporary ramp with that sharp curvature, we'd have trouble making that ramp work. So this substaging really helps us out. Now if we go back, we'll look at, I'm sorry, go forward, Shannon, I'm sorry, I keep saying that. So if we go back to looking at what this existing, what stage 2 is going to look like, now we have the traffic on the south side of the bridge, so this ramp will be able to split with access to 95 into Bridge Street and US 1 on the right. These 2 lanes will cross over still, so we'll still form back the 3 lanes with the 2 lanes crossing back over, and then this right lane, this blue line or access from the northbound bridge forming the right lane. This left exit will still come off to provide access up to 184 and Route 12. Now what's important about this, and this is true for both stages, is this ramp is accessible from I-95 northbound only. If you were on the existing northbound bridge, you will not be able to access this exit ramp while it's under construction. We're going to keep that separated with a barrier curb. It's too short of a distance for too many moving vehicles, and it will be an unsafe condition. So for this movement, for people from New London and Route 12 that want to access here, it'll be one of the detours that we'll be developing. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Mr. Giel, who will walk you through those detours.
Thank you, Mr. Schweitzer. Good evening, folks. As David mentioned, there may be short amount of time in which we're going to need to close the Bridge Street portion of exit 85 in the northbound direction. So that's shown here with this red closure identification. So this, again, short-term If necessary, the idea with this potential detour is to return vehicles to Bridge Street via exit 87 at Route 349. Vehicles can use exit 3 to Bridge Street, turn left at a temporary traffic control signal, and return to Bridge Street. For those continuing south, they'll just continue on Route 349. That'll provide access to Electric Boat, Pfizer, Yukon Avery Point, even where we are tonight at the Municipal Center. Next slide. As David noted, the access to exit 86 will be changed for the duration of the crossover that's in place. So as he noted, specifically, access will be changed for Route 32 southbound and Briggs Street ramp, as well as the Route 32 northbound and Huntington Street ramp. So these two ramps, they consider it Route 32 system in downtown New London, will carry on the existing northbound bridge structure. Next slide. And continue, similar to the last detour, to exit 87. From here, again, take exit 3 to Bridge Street, and instead of turning left, go to the river, you're going to take a right to get to Route 1 and Route 12. Take a left, you'll head back to Route 12 and Route 184, get back to where you planned on going. Again, this will be accommodated with temporary traffic control signal at the Bridge Street and Route 349 ramps intersection. Next slide, please. On the New London side, there is structure work in the immediate vicinity of the Route 32 northbound and Huntington Street ramp. So to accommodate this, this work, we'll need short-term overnight or weekend detours. We have, in this particular slide, access for the Huntington Street on-ramp shown. The Huntington Street access will be provided via Williams Street to the north, turn left onto Briggs Street, and then return to I-95 northbound via the Briggs Street Route 32 southbound on-ramp. Next slide. From Route 32 northbound in downtown New London, we're recommending a slightly different detour. Use the 32 northbound access to the frontage road system. Take the frontage road system again to Briggs Street, and then return to 95 northbound at the Briggs Street ramp, similar to the last detour. The only difference being here, William Street versus the frontage road usage. At this point, I'd like to turn it to my colleague, Naomi Hodges.
Thank you. So I know I don't have to tell you all, but there are important resources that exist underneath this Gold Star Bridge. We have the Thames River and freshwater wetlands that are associated with the Thames River, and also the tributaries that feed into the Thames River. We are anticipating only minor and temporary impacts to those wetlands. Those are inland wetlands only. No coastal, tidal, or vegetated wetlands will be impacted by this project. We are not anticipating to do any in-water work. Most of the work is going to be from the bridge decks and above. However, some work will be needed from barges, or access to the piers within the river will be needed from the barges, and therefore there may be just temporary impacts to the navigational channel that's underneath the bridge. If you are boaters or recreational boaters in the area, you may see some barges out there. We're not anticipating to close the navigational channel, but there will be some barge movements. You may see that. There is a peregrine falcon nest on the southbound bridge. With that, there are time of year restrictions in order to protect the bird and also the birds and also the construction workers. So we are adhering to those time of year restrictions. And then I want to talk about the historic Winthrop Mill. This mill, you can see it in this bottom photo on the right here. The property is shared with the bridge structure. So in order to access and repair the bridge and the piers, we will need to temporarily close access to the parcel. That is partially just to protect, people from an active construction zone. and also to protect the property itself. That will be temporary, and my colleague will, talk about that time frame after me. And then, as I mentioned, there is the boat launches. There are 2 boat launches, one in Groton, one in New London. Temporary impacts will be associated with those boat launches. However, only one will be closed at a time. So if you are boaters, you will be able to still access the river. But we will have to coordinate which boat launch would be closed, and just tune into our website when that occurs. And then with all of this, there will need to be permit applications filled out and approved in order to do this work. We have coordination with DEEP, NOAA, the Coast Guard, Army Corps of Engineers in order to get these permits approved as well. If you go to the next slide, I'm just going to highlight some of the areas where these wetland impacts will be occurring. On the left side, we have New London. There's a bridge pier highlighted in this area. I believe it's right about in here. We will be needing to access in that area in order to perform some of the repairs. The impacts will be very minor in that area. That is what is shown on the screen is not the entire impact area, it's just the entire wetland. And then on the Groton side, similar, there's a wetland in that area between the train tracks. Temporary impacts may need to occur to also, access that bridge pier and the substructure in that area as well. At the completion of construction, all of these temporary impacts will be restored with wetland grasses. And with that, I'll hand it over to Nick to talk about right-of-way impacts.
Thank you. So as Naomi mentioned, this existing structure does span over 4 different, there's 4 spans that go over active freight lines. What we see here is the 2 on the west, on the New London side. We're mostly anticipating the impacts to the railroad to be related to our access needs for the project, but we will have to coordinate with their requirements for lifting overhead and also any flagging needs to support the construction of our work that's going to be occurring over their active lines. The utility impacts on the New London side are mostly isolated to a couple pole-mounted utilities that go underneath the bridge. The image here shows the Mill Street location, where there's a couple communication lines. The other location is at Crystal Ave, and in order for us to install our strengthening solutions, we're planning on temporarily or permanently relocating these to avoid any conflicts with that active construction project. So those utility coordination is ongoing. So what we're showing here are the potential right-of-way impacts. We are looking to identify the potential sites for contractor laydown areas and access needs. There is an active construction project currently in this site here that we are investigating whether that's a solution for us. There will likely be some local closures to the roads that go underneath the bridge here. This road at Mill Street is currently closed as is. There will also be some access needs just along the bridge for our steel strengthening solutions there. And as Naomi mentioned, the mill property is shown here with some access there. We are currently anticipating that those longer term closures of the property for safety would not extend beyond a 1-month duration, and that's really just for those operations that are occurring overhead. On the right side of the screen, you'll see that we've highlighted the boat launch area. Right now, we're using that as a potential site for some of our cranes. There's a overhead sign support on the structure that needs to be removed and replaced. So we've identified this as a potential location for accessing that work. And as Naomi mentioned, we'll coordinate with the boat launch on the other side to make sure that we keep one open at all times. Moving over to the Groton side, similarly, we have 2 tracks that go underneath the existing structure. We will be coordinating in a similar effort to understand their needs for all of our work and flagging coordination, but also any access needs that we have to work within the area beneath the structure and the piers adjacent to the structure. There are not any permanent utility impacts currently anticipated on the Groton side. And there are no permanent right-of-way impacts on this side or the New London side at this time. And with that, I'll pass it off to Matt.
Thanks, Nick. Good evening, everyone. I'm Matt Giannakopoulos. I'm a project coordinator with the department's Division of Rights-of-Way. It's our office's responsibility to acquire the property rights that are needed for transportation projects. As Nick just outlined, the proposed project may require the acquisition of some temporary construction easements, which is a property right that gives a contractor the ability to use private property, city property, for activities related to the project. So because of that, I'm here tonight just to give a very brief overview of the department's acquisition process. Any property rights or construction easements that are necessary for the project will be acquired under Connecticut General Statute sections 13A-73, 13A-98E, and whenever there is federal money used in any phase of a project, the department must adhere to the Uniform Relocation Assistance and Real Properties Acquisition Policies Act of 1970. Go next. So once the design is a little bit further along and the department knows exactly what rights it needs to build the project and we're ready to begin the acquisition process, each impacted property owner will receive a letter of intent to acquire from our office along with a property map which depicts the exact limits and the rights to be acquired. We then determine the fair market value of those rights, and we use that to establish an offer of just compensation. That offer is then sent out to the property owners in writing, and a right-of-way agent from our office is available to meet with the property owners to answer any questions and explain in detail the project, the impacts to that owner's particular property, and explain how the state came up with the offer. The property owner has a reasonable time to consider the offer and enter into negotiations. Once an agreement is reached, the DOT prepares all the necessary paperwork to transfer those rights, and they'll file a deed and the property map on the town land records. However, negotiations reach an impasse. In order to allow the project to move forward, the DOT may acquire the rights it needs for the project through its power of eminent domain. And in that event, the DOT files a notice in the local superior court along with a monetary deposit in the amount of the state's offer of just compensation. The property owner would have 6 months from that date to file an appeal if they thought that the state's offer was inadequate. Whether or not the owner uses their right to appeal, they can apply to the court to withdraw the money at any time. So I know a lot of times when people hear eminent domain, they think it means the state can just take your whole property for $1, but the owners would be entitled to that offer of just compensation, and the department would only take title to the property rights that it needs to allow the project to move forward. And in this case, like we said, we're talking about temporary construction easements. And once the project is completed, the DOT files an affidavit on the land records, which releases any temporary easements, and all their rights revert back to the owner. I'll be here during the Q&A to answer any questions. In the meantime, I'm going to give it back to Tracy to finish the presentation.
Thank you, Matt. Next slide, please. Let's go. Okay. So based on the preliminary design, the current estimated cost for construction is $591.9 million. The Connecticut DOT was awarded a $158.2 million grant through the Federal Bridge Investment Program. We're going to use a small portion of that to cover the rest of the design effort, but the bulk of it will be put towards the construction cost. The remainder of the construction cost will be covered using 90% federal funds and 10% state funds. No municipal funds are to be used for this project. Based on the current schedule, this is assuming that we get all permit approvals in time and temporary easements are acquired in time. We're anticipating that the final design will be completed this December. So this is an accelerated design schedule, and it'll go out for advertising in February 2025. Now, based on typical timeframes, we are thinking that Construction will start in summer 2025 and be completed in the fall of 2029. Next slide, please. So, as the team mentioned earlier, one of the overall goals of this project is to increase the structural capacity of the Gold Star bridges so that oversized, overweight vehicles are able to cross the Thames River using I-95. Currently, the oversized, overweight vehicles are detoured to the bridge upstream to the north that carries Route 2A over the Thames in Montville and Preston. So that adds another 17 miles to their trip. So in order to meet this goal, the southbound Gold Star Bridge also needs to be strengthened so that these permit trucks can start crossing the bridge again. So the department has initiated another project, Project 94-268, which will be primarily to do steel strengthening on the southbound bridge, which consists of two bridges, bridge number 2514A and B. B is the ramp bridge at the exit. So the scope of this project includes, as mentioned, steel strengthening on most of the components, the stringers, girders, in most of the spans on the bridge. And it also involves condition repairs, and this is to address areas where there's advanced deterioration, and it'll bring up the condition to a satisfactory level. And they will also do localized painting at those repair locations. To achieve this work, we're anticipating that the contractor will be using suspended platforms on the underside of the bridge, or using equipment from the land to gain access to the underside. So for the most part, there are no barges that are proposed in the watercourse. All the work is proposed to occur within the existing highway right-of-way, and also, again, no in-water work, so minimal environmental impacts are associated. For maintenance and protection of traffic, we're proposing temporary I-95 southbound right lane and shoulder closures for short periods of time, and this is to help the contractor get access to those platforms on the underside and deliver materials. We're also anticipating that there will be a need for some temporary local lane closures or full closures with a detour of traffic. And we're thinking these would be short-term, a single day or two, and this is just when we're doing the repairs over the roadway. So I'd just like to note that based on the current schedule, this project is anticipated to start in construction in summer 2025 and be completed by the following summer 2026. And the idea is that the crossover for the Northbound rehab project won't start until spring 2026. So we'll be able to get the bulk of these strengthening repairs done beforehand, before the crossover's in place. So when we're talking about right shoulder, right lane closures on I-95 southbound, you'll still have 4 lanes available because there are currently 5. And then lastly, the estimated construction costs associated with this is $13 million. And that will also be funded with 90% federal funds and 10% state funds. So before we move on to the Q&A session, we just want to thank you all for taking the time this evening to listen to our presentation and hopefully give your comments, questions to us. The Gold Star bridges are a vital link between communities in New London and Groton, and these repairs are definitely needed to ensure that the bridge remains a safe crossing and can safely carry all the vehicles, the 60,000 vehicles per day on each bound that typically use it. At this point, I'd like to open it up to questions and comments. So folks online, please type into the chat box and we'll read them off. And then folks that are here in person, we have these mics up here, and we ask that you please come up and ask any questions.
Lost the computer, so Zoom meeting dropped.
Okay.
Trying to get it back up.
Okay. So then, just questions and comments here. You guys have the floor.
You taking questions now?
Yep. Yep, please. Or if you want to use this mic.
What is the work going on the northbound span now, and how does that connect to the project in a couple of years?
That's a good question. I will take that one, and then maybe we have the team from our District 2 construction who are overseeing that project. But right now, the Gold Star Northbound project was split into 2 phases. Phase 1A is steel repairs on the truss spans. And the truss spans are those that are the spans over the water primarily. So those repairs need to be done first before we're able to go and remove the deck and do the rest of the repairs. So currently, phase 1A is anticipated to be completed in June 2025. So the thought, and they're on schedule, so we're figuring that project will wrap up, and at that point, the new contractor or the new project will start up soon after. So it'll kind of be continuous. No, you're welcome. Yes, I think so.
Hi there. Thank you. My name is Andrew Lopez. I live in New London. After I graduated from high school in 1998, I thought I would try to live the rest of my life without owning a car. I biked here tonight, and I thought before I ask my question, I would just tell you what I saw on the bike path on the bridge on the way over here. So I came from New London. An e-bike kind of rode ahead of us and got on the bridge and rode over. We never saw him again. Then I entered the bike path with about 6 of my friends on bikes. And first we encountered a runner going the opposite direction, so we all had to pause. We had to get off of our bikes and lean over so that the runner could pass. Then a motor scooter came from behind us, so we had to park our bikes again and pull over, and the motor scooter drove past, traveling in the same direction as us. And then we passed a bicyclist going in this opposite direction. So there was a lot of activity, surprisingly. And also, I saw something that I have never seen before, and I looked out across from the southbound bridge where the bike ped path is, and we saw a person riding a bicycle on the northbound span of the bridge, traveling in the same direction as us, and we thought, God help that person. So I suspect that may be a normal day's activity on the Gold Star Bridge for bicyclists and pedestrians, and it was pretty chaotic and a little hectic and a little intimidating, and one person traveling with us was under the age of 13, so I can't imagine what that's like. The question that I wanted to ask is based on Pete Buttigieg's visit to New London last year. And I think when this project was announced, it seemed to me this project was announced at that time last year in January, Pete Buttigieg was reported in the day as saying this work will involve a new multi-use path for people to walk or bike safely across the bridge. Then I also found a CT Insider article which quoted from DOT Commissioner at the time, Joe Giulietti, and he said the multimodal path is planned for the bridge because the multimodal path was key to obtaining the $158 million in federal funding that has been mentioned as part of a special grant. My question is, could you explain how it is, or could you explain what the meaning of Joe Giulietti's claim is that this $158 million that was announced in federal funds when Pete Buttigieg visited last year, how is it that that money stipulated an expanded or improved multi-use path? And can you offer any insight into what we might expect for the new multi-use path that was mentioned both by Buttigieg and Joe Giulietti? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your comment. I know there's a lot of interest in this shared use path. And you are right, as part of the deal with the grant and getting the grant, we need to provide pedestrian improvements, multimodal improvements. So we had to do some additional feasibility studies just to find where would be the best place for this path. You know, should it be in the northbound structure? Should it be in the southbound structure? So that took a little time. And we have just recently developed the preliminary design, but this was broken out into another project, 267. So we have a third Gold Star project that's focused on the shared use path project. So that will include the path on the bridge as well as the approach sidewalks and improvements in providing connectivity to neighborhoods in both New London and Groton. So the reason why that was pulled out was just this project is definitely needed. I don't know if you know that. I'm sorry. I'll clarify my statement. I just mean that we need to start working on the deck as soon as possible. I think many of you probably know the deck joint broke recently, and our maintenance crews had to go out and fix it. And it's just getting to a point where we need to start addressing the deterioration on the bridge. We are working on the 94-267, and we're actually planning on meeting with the cities later this month and then bringing it to the public in another public information meeting. We'll have a hybrid one again, where we'll present the design for that shared use path, again, on the bridge and on the approaches. And we really want everyone's feedback on it because we want to make sure that it's an enjoyable experience and that people are using it. If you'd like to hear a little bit more about what right now we're proposing that the path remain on the southbound structure, and we widen it to provide a minimum of 11 feet, but for most of the length, it'll be 14 feet wide. So this would allow for bidirectional bicycle, pedestrian traffic. We are looking at options to reduce the possibility of motorized bikes or vehicles going across the bridge, because we understand that they use it fairly frequently, and right now it gets down to 3.5 feet in some places where there are bump outs for overhead sign support. So that's not a safe condition, and that's why we're looking to widen it to ensure that people can pass in both directions. And then we would widen the existing approaches on both the New London and Groton side, and are looking at adding a spur to connect to William Street. But we'll provide more details in the, in the coming months. So please be on the lookout. If you signed in and provided your email address, we'll be sure to keep you on the mailing list so that when we have the public information meeting scheduled, we can reach out to you directly.
I'm your man on the street, so I'll bring this to whoever has the next question.
Okay. Thank you.
Two questions. I see the schedule for the project is for June of 25 through September of 29. Is that year-round, weather permitting, or is that seasonal? And the second question is the painting of the bridge. The last time there was a large-scale painting operation, it kind of turned into a fiasco for the residents of Groton. Hopefully, for this project, a little more diligence will be used so that the spraying problem doesn't repeat itself.
Okay. Well, I will take the first question. So that is year-round. It's anticipated that, weather permitting, they'll be out there during the winter shutdown working. We want them working as quickly as possible to get in there, replace the deck, and get out as soon as possible. One of the grant conditions is that both the shared use path and this deck work is done. It's open to the public by the fall 2029. So we're really working towards that. Regarding your second comment question, we will certainly be looking at that. I mean, usually when we do full painting, there are still traces of lead paint. We would do full containment to ensure that there isn't any paint or spraying, but is it more like the pellets when they're doing the abrasive blast cleaning that was coming out?
It was a little of both. You know,
Okay.
it was the blasting, and then when this actual painting, people were getting blue hazes on their vehicles, their homes, just from windborne paint.
Okay. Well, we will certainly look to specify, you know, the proper containment measures, and we'll keep that in mind as we proceed.
Yeah, good evening. My name's Robert Barice. I'm the president of Bike New London. We run a bicycle shop, and we're a bicycle safety advocacy group in New London. I want to thank all the officials for coming out tonight and making the presentation to us. It's really important. It's really important to keep the public in the loop. My questions, I got a whole bunch of questions, but I'm going to stick to one thing. I'm questioning the impacts to facilities beneath the bridge, and kind of wrap it all into one thing. I had a question about Groton and a question about New London, but I'm concerned about access and local road closures. Presently, I think every street in New London is under construction for new gas lines, water lines. I don't know what they're doing, but every street is torn up, and so we're already detouring all over the city, including in the area of your project. And so my concerns are, when you're working on the west approach, the impacts to State Pier Road, to William Street, to Huntington Street. I think you covered the town mill will be closed, and that's kind of disappointing because it was there first. But no, I understand. I mean, the decisions of where they put I-95 and Route 1, 80 years ago, we're stuck with it. So. But the other questions I had were access to our transfer station in New London. It's directly under the bridge. The city police fuel pumps are directly under the bridge. And on the Groton side, access to a section of the bike lane, which we were just talking about, the only way to, well, I'm going to say it's the only way, but the only way without a detour to get over to Bridge Street is to go under the northbound span. It's right about where exit 85 is. So what will be the closures or anticipated time frame of that during the project? Thank you.
Oh, well, we'll address, I think, his questions first. And forgive me, there were I'll start with the last one, and maybe HNTB can talk about the sidewalk closures underneath the bridge. Who wants to take this one? Maybe the anticipated duration of that.
Are you referring to the east side or the west side?
We were talking about the east
so
side, right?
The east side impact that you're mentioning, so we do anticipate that trail reconstruction to be coordinated with this project work. So there will be a portion where that trail is closed. So we're going to try to coordinate that effort so that it's during the same period to reduce any impacts to that access point for that trail. And as far as the The other road closures, again, we're gonna try to limit those to the time periods that are needed for lifting of new steel over the traffic, and we're gonna try to detour those for as short durations as possible. Right now, we're still working through some of those needs for the project, and there's going to be ongoing coordination with each of the properties and those detour routes once they get more defined definition for durations.
And just to add, when we met with the city of New London, they felt like they could work with us and we could specify in the special provisions that access needs to be maintained for them to the transfer station. Because you're right, it's just right under the bridge. And I know they've worked with our district construction folks on the last few rehab projects just to ensure that they can still access that facility. Did that answer all your questions?
I guess we'll have to wait and see how the individual impacts work out for us, because I can tell you that the traffic is already backing up everywhere in town, and I'm concerned. I drive through there, I bike through there. Everyone I know bikes under the bridges and drives over the bridges. I mean, literally every single person in New London and Groton needs to get over these bridges and not get killed. I mean, quite honestly, I'm concerned about the traffic safety of this. And I know you do all the traffic studies and that, but it's my main concern that people don't get hurt on a bike or driving. So thank you.
Thanks to everybody for the presentation. My name is Kate. I'm a regular bike commuter across the bridge. I use that bike lane almost every day. And so I appreciate you addressing 94-267, the shared use project. But I was also curious when you mentioned the southbound strengthening that'll happen before the northbound larger project. You mentioned right lane and shoulder closures. And I'm curious how that impacts the bike lane also.
So at this point, we're not anticipating any closures of the bike lane. It would be periodic, it might be temporary stoppages so that the contractor can reach over with the equipment. I mean, they'd probably be using like a snooper, one of those vehicles that has the arm so it can extend underneath. That's primarily what the lane closures are for, so they can get that access. So during this project, during the southbound, yeah, we anticipate keeping the sidewalk open the entire period.
Hi. When will the permit vehicles be allowed back on the bridge? How much traffic will that add, and how much weight will they add to the bridge?
So I can certainly answer the first part. The goal is by fall end of September 2029 is when the deck work is to be completed and the bridges open up to all traffic. That is certainly the current goal. Regarding the other questions, right now I think there are around 70 vehicles that are detoured to the structure to the north. We don't have a great estimate as to how many will be using the bridge after we make these improvements, just because a lot of them are probably using other regional paths because they know that they can't cross over the Gold Star Bridge. So we are anticipating that there might be more permit vehicles. But that, will it be significant? Yeah, we don't know. But we are, when we're doing our traffic analyses, we're looking at the bridge capacity and everything. We're projecting out at least 20 years or so. So a lot of, when we get into, especially some of the other work, We're looking at traffic volumes out into 2040 or so. I don't think it would change the capacity so significantly by adding these permit vehicles. And then weight-wise,
Yeah, oh.
weight-wise, it would depend on the vehicle. But we have standard vehicles that we need to design for based on the AASHTO Bridge Design Code, and that would cover a lot of these trucks that are currently detoured. So if in our analysis it rates for those vehicles, then these permit vehicles could go over.
So I had a question about seasonal traffic, because in the summer this is just an unbelievably busy road, and there's also a big project going on at exit 74 that's also so is there any kind of coordination with DOT, with exit 74? I mean, it's really not that far away, a couple miles down the road. And what's going to happen in the summertime? Because this road's almost you almost cannot travel on this road in the summertime.
So I will just start out, and then I'm going to turn over to our experts from HNTV on traffic. But yes, we are coordinating with the other projects as we develop the special provisions. We note the other projects in the area, and you can't have a work zone within a mile of another. So all of that will be factored in as we progress the rest of design. And at this point, I'll turn it over to David Giel, and he can talk more because his group performed the traffic analysis that kind of looked at the summer volumes during the temporary crossover.
Yeah, thank you, Tracy. And absolutely, that is a crucial point. That is actually one of the first things that the entire project team was keyed in on, is summer traffic on I-95, coastal Connecticut, seasonal, travel, whether it be New York out to Rhode Island or Cape, coming back. Either way, there's certainly a significant shift in the traffic. We actually conducted traffic studies for both non-summer, springtime conditions and summer conditions. So our design is actually based on summer, making sure that the main distance protection of traffic scheme can accommodate those summer traffic volumes. And right now, that's what we've planned for and what we accommodate. It's certainly, yes, it's certainly not ideal to have construction on I-95 relative to your traffic flow, right? Now, we understand that, but it does work in our models. And this is something that was actually just a few years ago done similarly on I-95 southbound, right here in Groton and New London.
Just 1 second. We had one question online. Maybe we can.
Yeah, so we have a question online from Kate, and Kate is wondering how many parking spots are currently available for vehicles with trailers at each boat launch. Additionally, has any additional parking been identified close to the boat launches for when a boat launch might be closed? And do you have any usage rates for the boat launch lots to indicate how much additional parking may be needed during those temporary closures?
So at this point, I will just state that we're at the preliminary. Oh, just jump in. Sure.
The boat launches will not be closed during the summer season. Both of them will stay open. That's what has been discussed with the owner of the boat launch, Deep owners. So they should still be able to accommodate existing conditions as with both of the boat launches open. So I hope that helps to clarify. Other than that, the other information we'll have to coordinate with the owners of the boat launch.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi. I was struck by something that you said about 40% of the traffic being more or less local, maybe not just local, Groton to New London, Groton, but, you know, opting out of 95 on either side of the span. And I guess as a cyclist and as somebody who feels the necessity of sometimes having to cross the bridge by car, I would just like to see a little bit more, and I guess this is what we come to next, but with the kind of redesign of the bike lane, something that incentivizes all of that, at least some of that local traffic, to not be car traffic, but to be other traffic. And I guess, you know, in my vision of the northbound span of this bridge, I see it not as car traffic at all, right? Because we're continuing to prioritize cars and trucks over everything else, and that is, you know, with all due respect to all of the hard work, this is kind of renovating a dinosaur. We should not be putting so much money and resources into allowing cars to continue to move seamlessly. Like, I would like to see cars move much more slowly on those bridges. It's posted at 55 on both sides, and cars move 90, 80 miles an hour and are actively unsafe, right? Like, I think about how unsafe I feel as a cyclist crossing the bridge, and I think, well, at least I'm not gonna kill anybody else. You know, like I'm endangering myself, but I'm not endangering anybody else. And every time I get behind the wheel of my vehicle and go across that bridge, I feel like, well, this could be the day when, you know, something terrible happens. I was driving across it just a couple days ago, and there was this mass of hoses in the middle of the road, right? And there's routinely garbage in the middle of the road that ends up in the bike lane and then ends up in the water. And so anyway, I guess my question is, how do cars move more slowly and more safely through this space? And maybe in these couple of years where everybody's going down to these 2 lanes, moving in both directions on the bridge, we're all thinking a little bit more about one another and a little bit less about our end destination, and that will maybe be good for all of us. But what I'm hearing here is $600 million towards more cars and making life easier for cars, and that doesn't seem good for our environment. That doesn't seem good for our future, and it's certainly not good for cyclists. You know, we are odd birds, and we shouldn't be, right? We shouldn't be so strange as cyclists going across this bridge, and we shouldn't be so inconvenienced and so scared the whole time. And it seems like we're waiting a long time once again. So I'm sorry, there wasn't much of a question.
No, I see your vision, and I think as part of this, the first step will be to widen this path. We're talking about putting a counter out there, because right now we don't have great counts as to how many bicyclists and pedestrians are using this. And with this counter, it sounds like it's a very popular path, and hopefully with it being wider, everyone will want to use it more. And then that will lead to other plans. And then, you know, maybe once we see this usage, we can start looking at other plans for other bike lanes and everything.
I think I can guarantee you that traffic on that bike path will quadruple if people aren't terrified to use it. The guardrail, the vertical fence guardrail, is absolutely an impediment to safe passage, because if you touch it with your bike, you die. I mean, you get hurt. You go right into the guardrail, and then it's very, very narrow. And then anyone who's had the experience, just like Andrew was discussing, of encountering a motor scooter or, I mean, we can talk all day about whether they're supposed to be on there, but e-bikes are a reality. People are going 25, 30 miles an hour on a bike, and there's nothing wrong with that, except that the facility is just incredibly small. It was built with an afterthought in 1973, and we're stuck with it. And it's the only way to get across, unless you are in a motorized vehicle. So we're looking forward to any improvements to it, to bring it to, I'd like to see it look like the one on the bridge in Old Saybrook, the Baldwin Bridge. It's big enough to drive a car or truck across it for service, and much safer. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Maggie, and I also rode my bike here from New London this evening. I think it's kind of crazy that 300 years ago it was easier to cross this river from New London to Groton than it is today. We hear accounts of Joshua Hempstead regularly crossing the river on a boat. So maybe we should go back to that for bikes and pedestrians. That might be more efficient for all of this planning that's going on. I'm especially concerned, like Andrew was, about the plans for the environment and what the state and what the federal government has committed to. The Connecticut Active Transportation Plan of 2019 creates a blueprint that is an action-oriented plan for meeting the needs of bikes and pedestrians, especially for projects that are federally funded. I know you mentioned that this is going to happen with this other shared use path that you mentioned for 2029, but I don't think we can wait that long. Crossing the bridge here today and seeing the kind of temporary chain link fence bridge that was erected following the oil tanker crash that happened reminded me that we were without a way to cross the Gold Star Bridge for many months. There was a temporary bus put in place that was very limited hours. It didn't allow evening transportation. I could not have come to this meeting tonight 1 year ago today because there was no transportation to get here by bicycle or for pedestrians. So if something like this is to happen again, if there is an accident on the bridge, there's no alternative means for bikes or pedestrians. This design of only having one direction is not adequate. It's not a safe approach for bikes. I mean, could you imagine closing the southbound bridge of I-95 and making all of the cars detour 17 miles for 6 months? No. But yet it's okay to do that for bikes and pedestrians. You said that this is a vital connection. And yeah, it's a vital connection, especially in the summertime. I mean, the data of how many bikes and pedestrians use this is important. You're spending $500 million on this project and you don't even have the data of bikes and pedestrians crossing here. This is really important information. This is the ideas of complete streets, of designing sustainable cities and creating a sustainable environment. You're not even creating that opportunity for us, the residents of New London, the residents of Groton. We don't have that opportunity. And I think it's a real shame that this project has gotten this far without us knowing and having a plan in place for creating a safe route for bikes and pedestrians to get across the bridge. I mean, I don't know, like, how do we hold people, the officials, accountable for this? And then one other thing I want to ask, and Frida sort of alluded to this, but again, with some of the transportation planning the state of Connecticut has been doing, this idea of a road diet. 95 is like 2 lanes in both directions for most of New London County. But when you get to the Gold Star Bridge, it's like 5 lanes in both directions. Yet you can't even cross as a bicyclist or a pedestrian. Like, how is that responsible planning for the roads of Connecticut? It just doesn't make sense.
So, nope, you bring up excellent points, and we are not dismissing the bike and pedestrian community's concerns. We
No mention of bicycles in this entire presentation.
Yeah, and that's, again, that's because it was broken out into a separate project so that we would be able to coordinate with you all and work a little bit more. Like I said, this, because the bridge deck is starting to deteriorate and we're going out there and doing maintenance repairs now, we wanted to make sure that we keep this project on track so that they can start working on the construction of it. But the shared use path project, we will be bringing to you within the next 2 months for your comments, and we would appreciate the feedback that we get on it. So, because we are looking to improve it, make it safer, so that people will use it.
How many people from this transportation planning group has either ridden their bikes or walked across the Gold Star Bridge?
Walked.
And you don't think it's important to improve as part of this project?
And we are, as the overall, you know, Gold Star project, the big bubble. It's just, the other one is just taking a little more time in design, but we're working to try to catch it up. We are looking at the approach sidewalks and trying to make sure that those are ADA compliant, because right now the grade is too steep on the Groton side, very, very steep. And you know, we're also, you know, trying to minimize any right-of-way impacts, and so we're looking at installing retaining walls, and we'll get into this more in the 94-267 public information meeting. Again, the purpose of tonight, and that's why it wasn't mentioned, was that this was focused on the Northbound Rehabilitation project mostly.
Good evening. Thank you for coming out. Is the slide deck from tonight's meeting going to be posted anywhere, either on the Gold Star Bridge or HNTB's webpage? We'll be able to find it somewhere.
It will be posted on the Gold Star Bridge project website.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, and thank you all for coming out tonight. I know this is a huge undertaking. My name's Mark Offinger. I live in Groton. I do have a number of questions, and maybe some of them are comments, and they're not in any particular order. I apologize. You noted that there's not going to be any work on the river, and maybe this is a future project, but given what happened in Baltimore and protection of the bridge base, I would like to think that somebody's looking at that. I know we don't have cargo ships going up and down under the bridge, but we do have submarines and other boats. So maybe that's a future project that somebody's looking at.
We, in an earlier phase of this project, we did a vessel collision study on both the northbound and southbound structure. To your point, we aren't looking at, I mean, we don't have those large cargo ships going up the Thames. So we ended up doing the analysis for the largest boats that are typically using, I think there's a tugboat, a Coast Guard tugboat. That's
lots of tugboats.
Yeah, yeah, that ended up being the largest. And based on that analysis, there is essentially no risk of collapse.
Great. A woman mentioned over there, and I just wanted to emphasize, you know, the condition of the travelway in terms of maintenance. When I've lived in Groton for close to 40 years, for 35 of those years, you could have eaten your dinner off of the travelway and the shoulders. The bridge was immaculate all the time. The last 5, 6, 7 years, it's a disaster. And I know budgets are tight and so forth, but when you're on a bridge and you have to maneuver around debris that has fallen off of trucks and out of cars and so forth, and not to have that stuff picked up on a daily basis, even a weekly basis, maybe even a monthly basis, is a real problem. I know that has nothing to do with your project,
but the condition of the bridge in terms of just maintenance, picking up stuff that falls, let alone the concrete chunks that appear every once in a while, is a real problem. Also, I would like to think that with all the improvements being made, I mean, there's many times I go over the bridge and there's a solid waste hauler, and stuff is just flying out of the trucks all over the place. I'd like to think with technology, cameras and so forth, that some of these, I'm sure some of them are constant, they just don't bother putting the netting down to hold this stuff in the truck. So it's not directly related to your project, but there may be some DOT maintenance folks here that, you know, can at least look at how often the bridge gets cleaned. I took note of your comment on the aluminum slats on the bridge, on the railing, and that you're going to switch that out on the northbound. Are you going to do the same on the southbound with whatever it is you're putting up, so that they look the same ultimately?
That is what is currently proposed, that it would be a steel mesh on the outside of the sidewalk.
For both legs of the bridge, with both of the project, the $13 million project.
This wouldn't be under the $13 million project. We were planning on installing that new fencing under 94-267, which is the shared use path
I would encourage the department to think about having the two bridges look the same. Also, I'm not sure I understand what the new barrier will be, but hopefully you can see through it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
great, thank you. PowerPoint, gentleman already asked that if it's going to be available. I was very interested to hear that basically 40% of the traffic is quasi-local. Just a reminder, and I'm sure everybody's aware of this, but you have 3 big audiences that hopefully there will be extra efforts made to reach out to them between EB, Pfizer, and the sub-base. And they may not necessarily come to a meeting like this to understand what's going on, but I would encourage you to reach out to those 3 entities directly and talk to the powers that be on how best to communicate with their employees. Because it's a zoo at certain times of the day in terms of traffic, and it's only going to get worse. They're trying to hire 5,000 people a year at EB for the next 10 years. That doesn't mean there'll be 50,000 new people there, but with attrition, people that aren't familiar on how to get around. This may also be a good opportunity to try to encourage particularly EB and Pfizer folks to use the Clarence B. Sharp Highway, which from what I can tell is a pretty underutilized resource. At least in Groton, it seems to be North Street that gets primarily used, but and there may be a reason for that, because Clarence B. Sharp Highway, must feel like what folks feel like on the bikeway. It's very narrow. Hours of operation, is this a 24-hour-a-day operation when the work is being done? May not know at this point because you don't have a selected contractor. And so those of us who live in close vicinity of the bridge, it's a pretty noisy environment. We're probably pretty used to it between the trains and the tugboats and other stuff that's going on and from the highway. But construction activity sometimes is very different. Being involved in having been involved in another project in Groton many years ago, when the contractor had to bang out rivets out of an old bridge 24 hours a day. I don't think there's rivets on this bridge, or not as many as there was on this other, but having some idea as to what is going to be the additional noise that's being generated would be helpful. And if there's any ways of mitigating that, and particularly if it's going to be a 24-hour-a-day operation. And I'm not saying that I would be against that. It would just be good to know. The more you can, if you can work on it 24 hours a day, the quicker the project will get done, hopefully. There wasn't a question in there, I guess, except do we think it's going to be a 24-hour-a-day operation?
Yeah.
Or are we going to wait until have the contractor tell us?
So right now we're anticipating that we're looking at like an 8-hour shift during the day.
Okay.
There will be some work that needs to be performed overnight or on weekends. I think we're thinking maybe 25% or so. But yeah.
Just to circle back, so at this point, it's only the railing on the northbound bridge that's going to get replaced. And on the southbound, we're going to stay with the existing aluminum slats.
So under this project, it'll just be the northbound. On the southbound strengthening project, we're really just focusing on doing the steel strengthening and the other repairs. And then under the 94-267, the shared use path project, we're going to be widening that sidewalk on the bridge and doing a bunch of work on the bridge. And at that time, we would replace that railing and replace that fencing, that aluminum fencing along the sidewalk.
Along the side, what about the other side of the bridge? I guess my desire or my comment is ultimately in 6-7 years when both projects are done, will both bridges, north and southbound, have the same railing system?
Yeah, it's something that we will discuss and bring up.
Okay.
We certainly see your point. So,
thank you.
Considering the cost of this project, was there any, and I really don't know what this would be like, but was there any talk of just replacing the bridge? It's a very old structure. It's a lot of old technology. There's a lot of new technology. I mean, is it really worth repairing this bridge?
So early on, there was a rehabilitation study that was performed, and at the time, we did look at a full replacement. But considering, I think the bridge is iconic, the length of it, there's several piers in the water, the impacts to the navigation channel would be pretty significant to build this. The impacts to maintenance and protection to I-95 traffic to build a new bridge. I think again to build a new bridge, we need to install new piers within the water course. You got the submarines there that we got to coordinate with, and then it's also a federal navigation channel. So, and ultimately, the cost of it turned out to be just too expensive, and we still have. Let's see, the bridge was built in the 1940s. We still anticipate that we have another 35 years or so of service life out of it. So we're still able to repair it and keep using it, and so that was the best option.
What coordination will be done with the Navy regarding concerns of moving submarines operating near barge-based rehabilitation workers and equipment?
So we've already reached out to them to begin the coordination. Typically, we have meetings with them once we understand the channel impacts and where we're going to have these barges located. We're still developing the plan as to like where they'd be moored. There are certain areas anyway that are off limits within the Thames because of it's used by the Navy. So we've started that coordination and we'll continue as the design progresses. Again, we're at a 30% level, so in the coming months, I think we'll be talking to them more about the impacts. Anybody else? Well, if there's no one else online, and I mean, everyone that's here, if you have more questions, feel free to come talk to us afterwards. But otherwise, we just want to thank you all again for biking here, for for taking time out of your evening to listen to our presentation and hear more about the project. So, thank you.